Welcome to Focus Schools podcast, Leading for Impact. My name is Brett Bishop, and I've worked at Focus Schools for quite some time, longer than I care to remember. It's getting really old, but happy to be here today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the idea of, leading this work in high school, and I am so thrilled today to have a colleague and friend to join us, Allison Anderson, who is the principal at East Windsor High School in East Windsor, Connecticut. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for joining us today. And we're just really excited to talk to you about the work that you have going at East Windsor High. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about your school and, yourself there as a leader?
So like Brett said, my name is Allison Anderson. I am a principal of a small school in Connecticut. We have about 250 students currently, very diverse population. High needs. Many of our students have qualified for 504 or special education services. I would say about 35% of our demographics fall in that lane. I started my career in a much larger school, so I have transitioned from a really big environment of maybe 1,800 kids to the smaller environment of 250 students. So there's been some challenges with that with me as a leader, but also some benefits to having a smaller environment. I've been enjoying my work with Focus Schools and Brett and learning lots. And so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Well, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. Yeah, and that's almost, to me, that's an interesting, that's almost another podcast in itself of talking about the differences between being in a large district and a smaller school. I had a similar experience in my time as a assistant principal, teacher, and then principal. And I did, like you said, I think there's benefits and challenges to both. But today we're going to just be talking about the work that you've been doing, sort of this phase one of using an instructional leadership team as a one way to help a school get focused. And I wondered if you might just talk to us a little bit about starting with the targeted learning focus. When you were getting started with all of that in your school, what were the conversations like, and what did you run into for people's fears and their hopes and questions, and what were some things that you would help others to understand as they get started?
If you don't mind, I want to back up for a second.
Sure.
I think one of my I'm a new principal, as far as new being, this is my third year. And one of my fears as the leader was trusting in teacher leadership. So I think that was one of the fears that I really had to overcome. Being in a new school, trusting teachers that I didn't really know. And one of the things that I learned was that I need to trust teacher leadership if I'm going to move the school. I can't do it by myself. It can't just be me and my assistant principal doing it. I had to have a representative of the adults, and they had to be part of the voice. So I finally said, okay, we'll do this. Sorry, that's the bell. We'll do this. And so we do have an ILT team, an instructional leadership team, and it's made up of about 7 individuals, all from different departments in the school. We meet, once a month or twice a month. And the fears I think the biggest fear was for our targeted learning focus was setting a goal that was a high enough goal. Like I said, my demographics in my school is very needy. And the school overall has not been performing well traditionally. So to set a high bar and a high goal was really scary to the adults, because what if we don't reach it? What if we don't get it? What's the consequences if we don't reach this goal? And my work with Brett and Focus Schools, why not? What's the risk of taking a chance on trying to reach something really high and powerful? And it also sends a really good message to the community that you send your kids to East Windsor High School. We're gonna work our hardest to get them to be proficient and on grade level. And so there was a lot of time between kind of figuring out what I wanted the goal to be with the team and kind of laying the groundwork of how to message that to the team. For example, what I'm trying to say is I couldn't just come in September and say, this is the goal. We had to do a lot of groundwork from, August till, I would say we finally came up with a team of our targeted learning focus goal, I would say a month ago, which in New England, schools usually run from August to June. So that was kind of like a long time, if you think about it, to kind of process through all that. But I think we needed that. We had to trust each other on the team, and we had to be able to do that. So So yeah, we have set a high goal. It's 80% of our students will reach proficiency. And that has not happened here at this high school really ever. So I think that's part of the fear of the team, but I think that's a bar we need to set. And I think that's a bar we can try to reach for.
And that's so interesting to me because I think well, I've never had an experience where a school didn't have at least some kind of fears around the notion of setting goals around, especially to me, when we start setting goals around the results for learning. And I don't necessarily see the same thing if we set goals around things that are related to kids' behavior, because I think that we often externalize that. We set that, meaning the kids have to do this. But when we set a goal that has to do with learning, it is embedded also, coupled as it should be with teaching. And so it's hard. I think it's really hard for us to think of doing that because we're putting ourselves on the hook. And I always feel like that's, to me, one of the things that gives me confidence in a school is where adults are putting themselves on the hook and seeing themselves as the partners with the kids and the families and making good things happen for kids. So as scary as it is, man, does it give me confidence and make me feel good about a school that is doing that? Because it's like they're feeling like, yeah, we're in this too, and we believe in our kids and we believe in our families, and I think it's a culture changer to do it. So that to me leads right into a great sort of next conversation piece is what were the conversations you had around data, and how did you think about using data to decide your targeted learning focus? What did you use? What research and data did you use to lead you there?
Sure. So I think one of the things that in education in 2023, our biggest crutch, our easiest default is the kids aren't learning or the kids don't know what they're doing because of the pandemic. I think like everyone wants to blame the COVID years as the reasons why kids aren't achieving in schools. But if you look at the data historically in the town I work in the school I work in, the COVID didn't change that data path. It was exactly the same trend. So the kids were underperforming prior to COVID, and they're still underperforming after COVID. So, and one of the benchmark assessments in Connecticut that we need to use is the SAT. So that was kind of the data that we used to look at student performance over the years. So we went back all the way to 2015, and I showed the ILT, the data, and we're kind of, I mean, we faltered a little bit more after the COVID, but it wasn't these huge decreases that everyone kind of anticipated or expected. And when it was right in front of the team, in black and white, they could see it. This is the story of East Windsor. What are we going to do about it? The conversation then shifted to, we have to make some changes here. We can't keep doing the same thing you were doing. Everyone says the kids were so much better back then. Well, if they were better, you were still doing the same thing because the results were exactly the same. So trying to explain that to them and have them really see that, I think, was really valuable. And then it really turned the script. And I still have to do a lot more with the school. We're obviously not there yet. Of stop blaming everyone else for the kids' deficiencies and start looking in the mirror and making changes with how we instruct as a high school. Obviously, what we were doing in 2015 wasn't working, so it's definitely not going to work now in 2023. So we have to make some changes. And so that's been a huge mindset shift for the team. I would be lying to you if I'd said everyone's on board with this mindset shift. I would imagine most of them are not, because this is going to take a lot of work, a lot of hard work. So it's my job to kind of help message that and kind of be like almost like the cheerleader behind the scenes to keep saying like, go try this. We can do it. Let's, try this new strategy. Don't give up, persist, all those kinds of things, because I think it's going to be a lot of work. It's hard work. And I think that's what's scary for the adults. This is hard work to change what we did or how we learned how to educate students. I'm asking them to completely change what they're doing day to day. And so develop new teaching habits. And that's gonna be really hard for them.
Yeah. And that to me, it's really interesting to think about that from the perspective of, leadership as a principal or leadership as a ILT. Because I'm a person who I had a ton of respect for. I used to go to trainings when I was a principal, and I always remember him multiple times during every training say, "It's about the conversations, folks." He would always use that phrase. It's about the conversations, folks. And I think his message there was, you know, we are changing things one conversation at a time, you know, and the way we talk about these things is how we're going to change it, which I found to be almost empowering in a way, because instead of it being about some crazy astronomical thing that I'd have to go get a doctorate to understand, it was really just saying, no, it's just about how you talk about this and how you write about it. And so I really valued that. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about, you know, what conversations with the whole staff have you had? Well, how has that gone? You know, what's that been like to have those conversations with the full group?
So I think so to start the school year, my conversation with the entire school team was kind of to persist and be relentless with our students, and to not give up, not give in to their unmotivated behavior. I mean, that's what they do. They come in, they forget what you did yesterday, and we have to be the adults and continue to persist with them. So that's kind of been the narrative all year with the staff, you know, don't continue routines and rituals. As far as this work of like the instructional changes, the ILT, we made our target learning focus goal. The ILTs went to their individual teams and messaged the goal to them. And as far as me messaging that goal to the whole school, that hasn't happened yet. And that will happen before they leave for the vacation summer. So like it probably will happen in the next couple of weeks. But I will have to reflect hard and long on how I'm going to message that. I'll probably go over a script in my head about 1,000 times driving to work and driving home, because it's really easy to have that not easy. It wasn't easy to have the conversation with the ILT either, but it's a lot easier to have that conversation with 6 leaders in a room than to have it with the entire school. And I know they've gotten a little preview with their leaders. But I don't know how their leader really messaged that. I did tell the leaders I would come in and help them with that, but none of them seemed to really want me to come in and help them with that. So I have no idea what they talked about really in those meetings. They could have said, you know, she's losing her mind. What does she think? She really thinks we're going to get, you know, these kids to 80%.
There's other data to support their intention that you've lost your mind. So I think that, yeah. they're not on a limb there, Allison.
Yeah, like who is she, you know, just I'm sure there is some of that, but at the end of the day, I think they all do agree that based on the data, and the data is like the one equalizer for every conversation. Based on the data, we are not moving our children. So think of me as crazy as you would like. I want the children to move, and so we're gonna really look at the data and we're gonna make some changes, and some of it might work and some of it might not, but I have a feeling it will, because I think if we're all kind of moving on the same thing and towards the same goal, I think any organization probably can move if that's happening.
And one of the things I've admired about what I've watched you and your team do is to really take the time to try and make sure that you're having these conversations and that you are including everyone in the conversations. And it doesn't mean that that's, you know, everybody getting together with a big warm hug, right? It's oftentimes, you know, there's discourse, there's disagreement. And I am a fan of, you know, those things happening, because to me, in the end, what we're looking for is fidelity. And those allowing lots of fingerprints and lots of discourse to happen, to me, is a friend to fidelity in the end. So I just think that that's something that is really, really valuable to consider about the process you folks have done. But I wondered if you could just touch a little more about if you were thinking back over the year that you've been doing this work with the team, is there processes that you look back on and think, well, that was helpful when we did that? Or are there things, that basic processes, that if you could go back and whisper in your ear at the beginning of the year and advise yourself, or if you were helping someone else to think about how to do this, what are some processes that you think were valuable?
I do think the data conversation was extremely valuable, but I do think it took some time to get there. I did like talking about instruction and kind of our goals around that with the team. I do think though, if I go back, I think it's really hard. I just think it's really hard still, even now, for me to trust them in their messaging. And so I don't know how to change that. And I don't know if there's anything I could have done to change that. It's just kind of, I think people become principals because they want to lead, and they have a vision, and they want that vision to move out. And it's really hard to kind of have a vision and then trust other people to live out your vision, and message your vision, and really the school's vision. But I know we came to so I think I don't really know if I would change too much. I just think I'm still not there yet with trusting them completely to lead the mission, if you know what I'm saying. But I think that I have to do more work on my end. So now I've just talked through this question. Sorry. I think one of the things I definitely would do is, one of the things I've noticed is I haven't paid enough attention to my relationships with the leaders. So next year, what I would like to do is maybe have monthly or even bi-monthly meetings with each of them as individuals, just touch base on how things are going with their teams. Instead of having the big group meet together and having all of them and then me and all of us talk together collaboratively, which has been really effective. But I think I need to give them a little, I guess TLC one-on-one to hear where they're coming from and talk through their fears on some of this stuff, because it's hard. I think they're equally as afraid. So when I'm asking them to message things like this, I think they're having a hard time on how to message that. What's the purpose? Why? What's their fears around that? And maybe I should have done a little bit more meeting with them individually to help them build their leadership capacity to be able to carry out the vision.
When you talk about the idea of adults leading adults, I think we spend almost 100% of our time in training to become an educator, in the skills and habits of leading students.
Mm-hmm.
And then we assume that people will be able to lead adults. And that, to me, what I learned is that's a whole different ballgame. And I thought, like, for example, I saw, I can remember as a principal, this incredibly effective teacher, incredibly, one of the best teachers I've ever been around. And so I just went right past the notion that it would be of any concern for her to be on the ILT, because I thought, oh my God, she's so awesome. She's got to be on the ILT. And when I asked her, she said, whoa, hold on. She'd been teaching 30 years. She said, whoa, easy, hold it. And she said, Brett, you could put me in the cafeteria with 1,000 kids and I'll be fine. She goes, but don't put me in a conversation with 3 adults. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked, because she had tremendous respect in the building. Like, when she talked, people listened for good reason. And she was like, I'm scared to death if I have to talk to adults. And I was flabbergasted by that. But it made sense to me, because all of her effective work that she'd done in her career was working with kids. And the working with adults can be painful for people. It can put their relationships in jeopardy in their minds, and it can place them in a position that they're really uncomfortable with, having to talk about things that are central to people's thoughts of who they are as a teacher. So it was interesting to me to see that pushback. And the other thing that I learned in that conversation was, she said to me, she had been teaching 30 years in the building, in the same building, from the time she got out of college. And she said, this is the first time anyone's ever asked me to be a leader with adults. So I thought, how could this person have made it this far in their career and never been asked to do that? But then when you think about it, it makes sense. We don't often ask adults to lead other adults. Mm-hmm. So it was really interesting to bring that point up, what you're talking about, that's a whole nother set of skills that people need help with. And never mind us as principals. I'm like you, I thought I needed a lot of help with that, on how to do that. But
just back off that. I know you want to,
sure.
But like, yeah, no. I think too, the role of like basically their department leaders, it used to be getting supplies, finding out what the budget needs to be. It was liaison between the administration and the teachers, but it was all for those managerial things. It had nothing to do with instruction. Mm-hmm. And so right now, shifting that from what it used to be to now talking about how we're going to change your teaching and asking them to be the messenger on that, and then also lead like professional development around that. That's a huge shift for them, especially with some of them who have been here for because there are some veteran staff members on my ILT, they've never had to do that. They've never had that expectation. And I thought this, and they probably, when they signed up to be a leader, they thought just that I'm going to be getting together supplies and doing the budget and if she needs student of the month, I'll be the one she asks for student of the month. Now I'm saying, all right, well, how are we going to give feedback to kids? How do you want to teach that? What's our goals around instruction? How are we going to get kids to talk more in class? What do you want to do with subjective writing? And so now it's shifted from being, the manager of a school to more of the instructional, leader. And I think some of them that's where I think I need to really support some of them in that role, because they never had that role before.
Yeah, that's so important what you just said there. And I think that's also, I think that shift is going on across America because we're really trying to change the notion. But whenever I've seen somebody, either a school trying to define what effective professional development looks like or effective adult support looks like, or an article written about what is adult learning supported by, it is invariably, it lists the idea of, I have it embedded in my job with a trusted colleague as a partner. And so it's less and less of some expert telling me what it is, as opposed to a colleague working with me. Mm-hmm. So in our efforts to move in that direction, to get really effective adult learning to happen, of course, it means that we're asking adults to act in that way. But man, sometimes it's hard because it's scary. I think it's scary to be put in that position. But I also think the only way I've ever seen it be successful is to get launched, get started, it's not going to be perfect. I can't wait for it to be perfect before we get going. It's just we got to get going and see what it brings us and partner with people along the way. The good news about that from my perspective is once we start doing that, people never want to go back. They never want to go back. If there was one thing I was sure about as a principal in my school is any professional development or meeting where I talked, people didn't like it. Any professional development where their colleagues talked and they got to talk to colleagues, they liked it. Mm-hmm. So it was like, it's way better when teachers are talking to teachers are leading teachers. It's way better when Brett is quiet. And so I think that's really helpful. So I could talk forever about this, but I wondered if you might just share any tips you might have for folks about communicating. Is there anything you've learned? You have this awesome newsletter that I love that gets read, and it to me, there's lots of really cool stuff in there that you've done. But anything in there, or any communication things that you would say have been helpful?
With some of the instructional shifts we're asking teachers to do in the building, we want to make sure we're really I really want to make sure I'm transparent in what I'm asking them to do. So there's no guessing game. One of the things Brett and I talked about, he had a teacher, a really good teacher, who, this is a story he tells me, so I'm going to try to rephrase his story. But she basically came and found him and was like, you got to tell us what you want. We don't know what you want. So that's the summary version, by the way. So anyway, so then I that's kind of always stuck with me. Like, I find the more direct I am, to a point, I don't want to be brutally direct, but the more direct I am with what my expectations are, then there's no gray. So in my messaging every week, when we're doing our walkthroughs and things like that, at the beginning of the year, especially, my assistant principal and I, in my weekly newsletter, I would tell them, this week I'm coming in to look for fill in the blank. Maybe it would be learning targets and that you're referencing your learning target, or I'm coming in to see that you're doing an activator in the first 5 minutes or a closure in the last 5 minutes. So each week we kind of would tell them what we were looking for. And now we're kind of putting it all together and we're looking for everything. But that kind of message, I message that every week. And then I would go around, and when I had some good examples of that messaging of like seeing that happen, I would take pictures of that and put it in my newsletter and reference the staff members that were doing that, because, those are your exemplars. Those teachers really like to get their star, if you will, and it keeps them motivated to continue to do the work. And then it maybe will help a middle of the road teacher or teacher that's having a hard time get some ideas by seeing those visuals, and at least knowing who they can go talk to if they need to find out how to write a better learning target, or how do I create a better activator. Just in my messaging, it's been that, and then through our walkthrough data, it's been data collection. So, I try to tally how much % of the walkthroughs we went to had fill in the blank. So I think that a lot of that has come from my weekly messaging. But I think transparency and then having data to back what I'm asking, and then to not let up. I think, you get to the middle of the winter, or you get to a certain month and you're kind of like May, for example, we're at the end of the school year here, and you're like, all right, I don't want to do these walkthroughs anymore. They should be good. But really, this is the time where I should be in the classroom more, because this is when everyone starts to let up. It's spring. It's kind of like, and you don't want that. You don't want to lose all that instructional time, especially when you have a targeted learning focus goal of 80% of your students getting proficiency. So you want to kind of keep going with that. So my communication has just been trying to be as transparent as I possibly can be, letting the teachers know what the expectations are, and then following through on the data that I collect to reflect those expectations.
One of the things that's interesting that I watched you and your team skillfully do at your school is also shifting the perception of the presence of administrators or others in a classroom from, oh no, someone coming to find out what I'm doing wrong, to no, we're partners. We're here to help you, here to support you. And I think that's hard to do in schools. It's hard to shift that, oh, the judge and jury is now here, to no, this is a really valued partner who's going to help me to be better at my job, who's going to help me get what I need. If I've learned one thing about being in effective classrooms, regardless of what age the students are, is the students start to see the teacher as this incredibly valued partner who always finds out what they need to help them. And I think that also mirrors what adults need. In terms of an ILT being their partner to help them, to listen to them, to see what they need. And the principal and assistant principal, when they visit, or the instructional coach, they are there to try and support them. And you guys have done a lot of really interesting work on that. And I think it's really valuable. So this is, to me, just such a generous gift of your time, Allison. We really appreciate you taking time to talk to us about this, because we think it's like the chance to share with others is really valuable. One of the things that you have taught me as we've gone through this process together is that idea that this isn't easy, and that you have to keep persisting, but you're always talking about the kids. And I value that lesson that you've taught me. And I think it's one of the things that your message to your teachers have been, and that you really enjoy the students. You're someone who's always in the hallway and really enjoy being around them. And so I thank you for all that hard work you're doing, and thank you for talking with us here today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So to those of you who listen, we also thank you. We appreciate you taking your time to join in with this conversation, and we hope that you will also take time to visit Focus Schools website, www.focusschools.com, and you'll see our social media pages are all there for you to join. We really appreciate any two-way communication, because as Allison's doing now, hearing from you about how you're doing this work is how we all sort of communally work with each other. So we invite you to like and follow, and hopefully continue to listen to this podcast. And we thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of the children of your school.